Call the Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting of August 23rd, 2018 to order at 6:35. Present, select persons rep Beth Boudreau, Crider, Joe McCaffrey, Vice Chair Lee Baldwin, Chair Bob Strobel, land use staff from the Town of Northwood. We have minutes of August 9th to go over, and voting designation is all members present. Not entertain a motion for discussion.
Oh, this is my cue. I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Crider, second by Ms. Baldwin.
Thank you. There.
Sometimes you would think after a couple years you're getting a habit, but that's okay. Items on the minutes.
That looked okay to me.
Yeah.
Going once?
Short and sweet.
Going twice? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the minutes of August 9th as written, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Those abstaining? Mr. McCaffrey is abstaining. Absent is my guess? Okay. Just double checking. Okay. We have case 18-12, which we took a look at last week, and thank you for mailing my copy. And I don't know if it matters, but to be very clear, I am a resident of Old Canterbury Road. This is not an abutting property. It is 2 or 3 away from me. But
What is that? I didn't.
So that piques our curiosity, Bob. Which is your property?
further down there,
Further down.
further down.
What was your
Off the
remark,
map.
Bob, that you don't abut this?
No, I don't abut it. I have no financial interest in it. I have no conversations with the owners or the applicant, aside from the applicant's rep, who I talk to about every second or third, fourth Friday. Just to make it clear that if there was any reason or objection to me saying on the case. I have walked across that land, but that's about it. We need to look at completeness first. And I'd entertain a motion, either for discussion or for opening the case.
I'll make a motion to open it to accept the application.
Okay, as complete.
It's complete, yep.
Okay, and a second.
I'll second it.
I think we're gonna have our trial, or our I won't call it triumvirate, but the routine going again, which is fine. Okay, discussion on completeness. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion finding the application 1812 complete, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, those abstaining. Okay, we're on the books. So I'll open case 18-12. And I'll read the abutters list. If I know who the abutter is, I think I can figure out who that's going to be. Ridge Road Properties of Northwood, JP Structures of Northwood, Mark Lambert Jr. of Somersworth, Sandra Johnson of Northwood, Douglas Sweet of Northwood, Johnson Family Revocable Trust of Northwood, Town of Northwood, Tony Mattress of Pittsfield, and another town of Northwood. Okay. What do you have for us this time?
Very quick, easy two-lot subdivision. The current conditions right now out there, it's one lot, it's one big lot, it's 12.45 acres. The majority of the frontage is on Old Turnpike Road with about 940 feet of frontage, and then another about 400 feet of frontage on School Street, which goes up to your right. And then there's a small little access of 27 feet up on Canterbury.
Just to be clear, that small little access is between the tree line of what I think is now Lambert's, and essentially to the east of that tree line and abutting the Fairview Cemetery.
Yes. And on the property, as you probably all know, there was a house that got torn down a few years ago, I think. There's an existing garage, a fairly well-built garage that he's going to try to preserve. And there's a foundation still there, and I don't know if he's going to try to save that or tear that up and put a new foundation in. There is an existing leach field that's in there that was replaced in 2009, so I imagine he's going to try to probably reuse that. And then there's a dug well, so there'll have to be a new well put in place.
Just for my own clarification, is this the same set of prints as was mailed to me?
I haven't received a revised copy of plans.
I didn't get any comments.
Okay.
So.
Just double check it.
There is one change from the plan set. It did transfer to Dave Pelletier, so the old owner is no longer the owner. It did transfer over them since we submitted the application.
Okay.
And what we're proposing is a two-lot subdivision. The front portion would be 2.41 acres with frontage on Turnpike Road and on School Street. Reuse the existing driveway, the existing leach field, and there'd be a new well drill. The second lot is 10.04 acres, and the two-lot designation, the red line going through the property on the plan up on the easel is the proposed lot line. The green is the overall boundary. The proposed lot 2, or 20, I call it 21-1, there'd be about 680 feet of frontage on Old Turnpike Road, and then the remainder little piece up on Canterbury Road. The driveway would come off of Old Turnpike Road. New leach field, new drill well, everything. And that parcel is the one that we'll be talking about later on a conceptual basis of what he'd like to do on that. We did receive, and I usually don't do this, but we did receive state subdivision approval today on this. I usually wait till the first meeting, but this is pretty clear cut. And I don't know if the town got a copy of that or not, but I do have several copies, and you'll get one eventually. And then the only other permit that would be associated with this would be the driveway permits that would be issued by the local road agent.
And that would be just for the 21-1.
Right, or if you needed enough, I don't
Or
think
you
you need
changed
an
it.
updated one for the other one, but within the plan set, we do show sight lines. There is some grading that would have to happen as you come out of the lot onto Old Turnpike Road looking to the right. If you've driven the road, there's a good hump there, and we position the new driveway at the peak, but in the existing driveway, you don't quite get 250, so there's going to be some grading within the bank there to get that 2 foot of seasonal separation from the existing ground to sight line.
Where's that again? Just
On both the driveways, I believe they're both looking to the right as you come out of the driveways.
Where's the driveway on 21-1?
The driveway is shown on sheet 6 of 6.
Okay. I haven't gotten there yet, thank you.
That was one of staff's requested items was that it also be added to sheets 3 and 4.
Okay.
Yeah, just for clarity.
Yep.
You're saying, well, maybe the grading, I guess what I was just asking about, you referred to the grading, that you need to do a little grading to get 250. Which direction you're
It's
look,
to the right as you come out of the driveway, so if you're looking at the plan, it would be to the left. Yeah.
yeah,
SLP1, Joe. If you look on this SLP1, it shows where the site, they don't have the sighting.
well,
Here.
yeah. You mean the grade?
Yeah, you can see where the grade is, and then they show where they're gonna cut it away.
Does that go, is that on the thing that you're doing, is that
Sorry.
on the smaller subdivided lot, or does it go
Yeah.
into
The existing driveway doesn't currently have the site distance required, so it would be on both lots. It would be on that one, and then on the new lot, there's a little bit, as you go down the hill, that there's a hump that would have to be graded out a little
so the
bit.
grading kind of crosses the dividing line that you're proposing for the site?
Yeah, it would be within the right-of-way, but along that side.
And my only, I guess the thought, so it is, the grading will occur where the subdivision line comes out on Old Turnpike. Roughly speaking, it's falling at that.
Yeah, it would be several hundred feet along as you go down Turnpike Road. If you go west
Away from
Turnpike
School
Road,
Street.
it would be on the right, about a
Okay.
few hundred feet.
Well, so it affects both lots, right? And
Right.
so that grading would occur independent of either any development going forth.
Yeah, I would assume to get the driveway permit. There's an existing driveway, I don't know how they look at that, if the grading has to happen before that, because it's already out there. It should happen, and I imagine he'll do it, just so it's safe when he sells that house.
But from my recollection of it, actually, can you zoom in, Susan, on that? By where the house is? Sorry to not give you a warning.
Just go up a little bit. Oop.
Down to the right.
Because we're not.
It looks like, that still shows the barn. Excuse me. It looks like you're keeping this aspect of the existing driveway and removing that, so the grading would be, whoops.
That second one really isn't there anymore.
Okay. I have it.
Yeah,
Isn't
it
that
has
old
to
picture?
stick where it
That
wants to.
still has the house and the barn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an old photo.
Yeah, yeah.
But it sounds like, or from what I can tell, the grading would take place
right.
just
Right
in this
along there.
area. Excuse me for not being able to drive.
Yeah, right to the left of the lower existing driveway, yeah.
The left as you're looking at it. not-
Right,
not here.
Correct.
Well, I'm asking only in regard to, if, my guess is that there's proposal to go forth and use both these lots, but let's say not, one already has the garage still existing. And you're showing that actually a little, I guess you're showing the right-hand wing of it. So if nothing were done in the foreseeable future, I'm just, does the grading not get done? I'm looking at it from, so you're recognizing and you're pointing out to us that there's, the sight lines aren't sufficient, there's a hump there. Does that get taken care of immediately?
I would have, before they probably give the occupational or the occupancy permit, I would think.
You'd have to have a driveway permit, and if the
Yeah.
sight line isn't in
But let's
place,
say it's 2 or 3 years from now. I'm
it's
just,
just,
Then
you can't
it
build
wouldn't-
anything.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
yeah, things tend to get forgotten. That's all. There's a slight.
Yeah, it sounds like you're asking, will he go out there and do it now when he's not building a house? Probably not, until
Yeah.
there's somebody that's gonna live there, because really the driveway isn't gonna be used until somebody's living there. And he typically doesn't build unless he has a buyer. So, and he's doing very well in selling houses, so I imagine it will
Yeah.
happen quickly.
Is there any, do you know any order of events there as far as which lot might get developed first?
The house one is the obvious one. The other one's gonna take a little bit of time, probably along with the meeting with the board and other approvals, so.
Mr. Chair, can I
Sure.
interject for a moment? So typically for subdivisions, the board should not be concerned with the eventual use of the parcel. But considering the preliminary design that Scott is also going to be presenting tonight and looking at the setbacks that are in here, I wanted to bring this up for the applicant's benefit in case it changed their mind about the plans that you have before you. The preliminary design that you have is to put multi-unit residential on 21-1, correct?
Right.
If the zoning code has a different side setback for multi-unit residential, that side setback is 50 feet.
Yeah.
And the location of the driveway that you have shown is
But does that, where, does that, the
It's
driveway has to
20
be 20
feet.
feet.
the driveway. If the driveway is a structure, the driveway needs to comply with the side setbacks. If there is multi-unit residential on this parcel, the side setback becomes 50 feet. So if you're paving that driveway, it would need to comply with a 50-foot setback, not a 20. If your intention is to use that for
Yeah, we were gonna use the same location. We can move that over though. 30 feet.
How would,
Same location?
It would
as what you
actually
have?
improve
Improve the sight line.
Improve the
Sight a
sight
little
line,
bit.
actually.
well, to
Moving it
the,
further west?
Yeah, so that's.
You're talking about
but not the, it wouldn't, the sightline off to School Street.
Well, just to make a further observation along that line,
Yeah.
as Mr. Burton was saying, he said the use normally doesn't apply, but then he's talking about the future use, but we're already getting indications of what that might be.
Right.
My concern was time frame, not so much use. Both of them are going to get built on. One's already partially built and will be further, enhanced. So
Still good.
it's just that if there are lots, had a few cases in the past where, and this is probably not likely to happen, but I'm not looking at the likely scenario, where lots are subdivided and then platting is done for a driveway or not, or talk about it, and then years go by and nobody knows quite what was intended, or it's not followed up on. And so that's occurred in my experience, and a number of people here have that same experience.
I think
So
I know what you're talking about, Joe.
I'm just looking at if it's subdivided and we're going along with it, regardless of the multifamily, which I think brings up an important point that
This
Mr. Burton just
application
did.
is distinct and separate from.
Correct. You should not be taking the multifamily use into account when deciding whether to subdivide. The subdivision that you have before you is, to staff's interpretation, compliant with zoning code, and if the applicant wants to subdivide as you see it, staff doesn't see an objection to this design. The only reason I brought it up was that if the board approves this with the driveway where it is, and the applicant were to come in with a use that would then require the driveway to be moved over, they might want to address that driveway location now.
Yes.
They might,
They might.
yes.
Yes.
The board should not.
Right.
He could change his mind and want to just put a single family on that lot in the future, even though maybe multifamily is being suggested. But what I'm getting at more is that if we approve this with driveways as shown, as the approval, there's sight lines required, at least within, I mean, we allow for certain margins of
But don't we discuss the
Non-compliance.
driveways and the sightlines when they come in for building?
Site, for
We
site
we would
For site
also
review.
discuss driveways
Right,
as
so it
part
could
of the
be-
site approval.
Right, so it could
And
be
whether the
changed then.
design was accurate, the location would be the important thing. That if the plat shows a location, we wouldn't be able to move it without amending the
Okay.
plat. All of the details about where exactly on the site that driveway is going, once it's actually beyond the driveway curb cut, that's something that we'll figure out at site plan level. What we're primarily concerned with here is where that curb cut is going to be,
Okay.
and whether the applicant would prefer to alter their designs to move it.
But in approving it, we have to see sightlines that are appropriate. So the proposal is that they will be created. That the sightlines will be achieved by doing some grading. That's the thing we heard. So I'm just saying, back to my point is that just when is that going to be done as part of, we're approving it based on that. You're saying that,
That grading would be done in conjunction with the driveway installation associated with the driveway permit.
And they have to get a driveway permit before they can get a building permit.
okay. And so this needs to be in the conditions then of
No.
Right.
possible
No.
approval.
No.
Everything that needs to be in the conditions is already recommended to be in the conditions, which is that they have to pull a driveway permit.
Yeah. That's standard procedure.
Yeah. With adequate sightlines.
Right.
The adequate sightlines are
Part of the
assumed
permit.
as part of code.
Well, I'm having a minor difficulty with that, only in that, yeah, it's assumed, that word assumed is part of code, yeah. We're getting a proposal to go ahead, and in the near term, this will be fresh in everybody's view.
But Joe, I don't think you can put the expectation on them to do the work before they're ready to do it. And
Well,
I think you have to have the
No,
expectation.
I just want no, that's
Yeah.
true. In one sense, I agree with that. But I'm just saying that it seems to me it needs to be somehow spelled out a little more clearly that that's the basis of our approving this.
Well, it does.
Well, they have to
Yeah,
get,
because it's already been represented that
Right,
they're
they
going to
have-
change the
You
grade.
have to
they
get a
have to get a
permit.
driveway permit
It's
and part of the sign.
typical, it's typically assumed by the planning board that the applicant will follow the process they have to follow and comply with the codes that they have to comply with. If they fail to, that's an enforcement issue on the back end. That's not the planning board's issue.
Exactly.
So it's up to you to say, yes, what you've shown me can achieve compliance with code, adequate sight lines, all of that. And then it's staff's job to make sure that the process proceeds as it should. And it's
Including-
code enforcement's job to step in if it doesn't. That's not the planning board's responsibility.
I understand. All right, those are my observations there. How much the grading goes for about, that you're proposing right now?
Looks
On
like it
the larger lot, it continues along the road for about how?
50 feet on the,
50?
yeah.
You're taking off 3 3/4.
If this should be multifamily, as discussed briefly, does that make that more or less? Yeah, that's a 50-foot setback then.
Right,
So-
we'll pull it over, and as you look at the dotted line on the profile is the existing grade. So if we moved it to the left on the plan,
It improves it a
it's
little
going to
bit.
go up,
Makes it easier.
which is, consequently, you're going down on the other side, but you're getting past that hump. So there'll still be some grading, no doubt in there.
Yeah.
And then on the school street side, That's coming up as well, so that I don't see changing very much.
As applies to the the smaller lot?
On the larger lot, where if we shifted that over, say 40 feet,
Yeah,
or
it would, yes.
it would pull it up the road a little bit as well.
The,
So what you gain on one side, you'd be doing a little more of on the other side. Yeah.
and staff told me if I'm getting too far ahead in terms of the conceptual design, but I want to bring up the point that if you decide, and again, it's not the board's decision, to move the driveway for 21-1 over to meet the 50-foot setback, it looks like you're getting into a steeper slope section at the end, right where it meets the road. Are you going to be able to, well, I guess you could grade it. Thinking of, you're getting into steeper.
Right.
We have a perch zone, or no, that's for the road, sorry. Typically, you want a flat section before you pull out, but I guess you can always grade it.
Yeah, there will be a cut into that bank, obviously, and then we'll have to bring it up and grade it up around. We're not getting into the really steep stuff down there.
Yeah, yeah, right there. It's right next to it, though.
Yeah. In that area, where it's really steep is the area we're showing as being graded a little bit as well. But it looks similar. If we moved it over 30 feet roughly, it looks like where we go on to the lot is pretty similar to the slope of what we're going on right now.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Just double check.
Yep. And the intent would be for this application is to use that location and be 2 single-family lots right now.
Okay. Okay. Questions from the board? And he was quiet when he snuck in. Justin Mikuleski is added to the meeting at 6:50 and to the voting designation at the same. At this point, I will open the public comment section.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
before you do that, I do
Sure.
want to note that there are 2 waivers requested as part of this application, just in case the public would also like to comment on the waivers. The first waiver is to section 3.01E of the of the subdivision regulations to allow lot 21-1 to contain a narrow strip of land approximately 27.86 feet in width, where 100 feet is required. That is a feature of the current parcel. We would consider that current parcel to have non-conforming status, which would mean it's not subject to enforcement as it stands, but by approving a waiver, we would be making it compliant with the current subdivision regulations. The second, no, I'm sorry, there is only one waiver. The second item under waivers requested is me noting that if the board is amenable to granting that waiver, we would suggest that a note be added to the plan identifying the waiver requested and the date that it was approved, so that lives on the plan set to show that that waiver was approved.
Yep, exactly. Sorry, Gary. And just to double check the process, if we approve this subdivision tonight with this
If you
plan set.
intend to move the driveway, I would suggest one of 2 options for doing that. Either the board could request that the applicant go back, redraw the plans showing that driveway where it is and showing the site profile and come back at a future meeting, or you could approve the application tonight and we would add a condition that the driveway be amended to be shown at a precise location indicated by the applicant tonight and agreed to by the board.
This application, we want this application standalone, so if you approve it as a 2-lot single-family residential subdivision, that driveway can be where it is.
It can, and
So
so
that's
if
what-
if you don't intend to move the driveway tonight and you want the application as it is to stand, then it's a moot point.
Right.
And we can act on it tonight.
And when the other application comes in is when we would move that driveway, if that moves forward.
If that's the,
So if you ultimately intended to do that, in that case, you would need to file a simultaneous site plan application and application to amend the subdivision to relocate that driveway.
Right.
Which is a process that this board can avail itself of.
Yeah, the intent, because who knows if and when if that multifamily will be approved, so rather get this approved as a standalone and we'll have to, if that driveway moves on the
Okay.
multifamily, then we'd have to refile it.
Okay. That's your prerogative, and it could also be handled by a variance from the ZBA to account for
Yeah.
the setbacks.
okay. At this point, now I'll open the public hearing. If any abutter or member of the public would wish to speak on this application, please do so now. You can even come up to the table. We got an extra microphone. And you just need to state your name.
Tony Mattress. Can someone, I should probably know this, but what's the current zoning? That entire lot?
It's the general district. Northwood only has one zoning district.
And
I don't think I saw any prime ag soils or anything to that effect in the overlay.
then my second question is anything known at this point about the location of the multifamily? Or is that too premature?
That would
Okay.
potentially be a subject of a future application, but that's not part of what we would consider under a subdivision.
Yeah. The rules of the board is that the applicant is proposed this as a subdivision to the best of his ability and license. These are the conditions on the ground. The only real impact that potential of multifamily came in is the location of the driveway. That's required to be shown on the subdivision lot plan, but it also can be moved if and when the subdivided lot comes up for another application.
So if that application was filed, it would be subject to site plan approval. There would be another public hearing, and you would have the opportunity to speak again at that time.
Yep, okay.
Or you'd be notified.
Sure, yeah, that's...
Yep. And just to... Okay, yeah. Just humor me on this one. The 27.86 foot tail by the cemetery is within or adjacent to the 20-foot setback from the lot line. In theory, that would not be wide enough to accommodate a driveway access on Old Canterbury Road in the future without a waiver of allowing a structure in within the 20-foot setback. Would that be correct?
If it was unimproved, it was gravel.
It was just
I know, like I said, it's just,
So staff's current interpretation, and we're going to get to talk about this in a couple minutes because this is going to be fun. Staff's current interpretation of the setback rules as they apply to driveways is that a paved driveway counts as a structure. A driveway that is not made of a man-made substance, i.e. a driveway of natural materials such as gravel, does not constitute a structure. and therefore we have historically applied the interpretation that setbacks apply to driveways that are structures, and a driveway that is a structure, a paved driveway, would not be permitted in that tail. A driveway that is not a structure, gravel, dirt, could be permitted in that tail with a driveway permit.
Just curious.
I don't know if this is a thought that you have, but as far as could they put any type of road through there for development, it isn't wide enough.
What?
Yeah, that little tail.
Right.
What did you say? Could you repeat
It
that,
has to
please?
be 50 feet, correct?
Yeah.
I would also note that similarly to moving the driveway on Old Turnpike Road, if any sort of driveway access point were to be proposed for that northern end, they would need to come back and amend their subdivision approval at that time as well.
True. That goes along with
What did you say, Linda, about that narrow section?
if correct me if I'm wrong, if this was to be further subdivided in the future into multiple smaller lots, you know, just for argument's sake, if it's a 10-acre lot, in theory, to meet the 2-acre minimum, they could put 5 houses on it. They would need to put in potentially need to put in an access road, and that access road would not be able to fit or be accessed off of Old Canterbury Road because that little tail is only 20, not quite 30 feet, and the access road would need to be 50 feet.
The way the regulations stand today, I would say it would be highly unlikely the applicant would be able to put an access point
Agreed.
for a future subdivision from that point, and if they did, they would need significant additional
Yes,
actions from either this board or the zoning board.
correct.
So a subdivision access boundary is 50 feet minimum
50-foot road for a road.
per road?
For a road,
Yeah.
yes. And
Is that including any setback or none?
Just the road itself.
just the road.
Okay.
You'd still have to have setback, I think.
And the subdivision access would be paved, would it not?
Correct. But that's
So then
well,
Well, yeah, but that makes it even
It's
wider than if
hypothetical.
it
it's
was.
all, yeah, very hypothetical. But the reason I ask that is that because of the fairly restrictive location of the driveway on Old Turnpike Road for 21-1, potentially going off of the other side of the lot in the future for something might be possible, depending on the width. But again, that's getting more ahead of myself.
Now, if this were, just in your remarks there, if this were, let's say it stayed as a single lot subdivision, the larger parcel with this little tail on it, could that not be an access point? Gravel?
A gravel
gravel
driveway.
driveway.
Gravel driveway.
It probably was meant as that in the first place. It's probably the reason it was left like that.
It's tractor
Sure,
access
it's
to the
tractor
field,
access.
yeah.
So you're not driving across the cemetery. Just fine. Okay. Thank you for indulging me in speculation and hypotheticals. Questions?
Still in public.
Yes, we are still in public. Sorry, Tony, you have anything?
No, that's
Further?
it. That's it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since there are no other members of the public here, I will close public comment section for hearing. Applicant's application 8-18-12. We have the waiver request for the, essentially that tail that would bring the lot into compliance if we decide to approve it. Conformity, not compliance. I would entertain a motion to that effect, just to bring it up for discussion.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Okay.
For clarification, is staff's recommended condition of the waiver part of that motion?
Sure.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay. So this is a waiver for section 301E.
Oh, you did? I didn't hear
I
it.
didn't hear you. I didn't even hear you.
That's your attorney on it, to be honest with you.
Okay, motion by Mr. McCaffrey to grant a waiver for section 301E with the condition that a note be added to the plan, provided that the waiver is approved. Second by Ms. Baldwin. Discussion on the waiver. Are we clear what the waiver is doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead. Just continue.
It's not on the waiver?
Pardon?
A question not on the waiver?
No.
Okay. Just thinking offhand.
I don't see any issues with it
Yep.
myself, because it's, as pointed out, it's a grandfathered situation, pre-existing.
Very much.
It's, it seems to, you know, like was said before, I did, but commented on it, seems to have had a purpose originally as just an access, probably for agricultural purposes or whatever, but since there's no building there.
Okay. Further comment on the waiver? Hearing none. All those in favor of granting the waiver for 301E, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay. Okay, and the condition of adding the note was attached, included in that motion. So that brings the lot into conformity, I guess, for future use. Questions on anything else on the application?
Well, James pointed out number 2 there, it's not a waiver situation, but
Correct.
The requirements on the smaller lot are satisfied as far as the town's ordinance setback requirements, and the larger one, we don't know what the future might be, so seems like things are in order there, from my view.
I'm just looking to,
There's more than enough room between the well and septic, existing septic, and
Yep.
well radius. And proposed well. I guess
Two.
that's going to be a new well anyway, so.
well, here's just double checking on that. If you look at sheet 3, is this all wetland in the bottom left-hand corner?
If you're looking at the, on the big lot,
Yes, on the big lot.
yeah, the bottom left corner.
That is all wet,
Yeah,
and you've got your long dash line is the 20-foot setback for that.
yes.
And you've got 40, 50 feet between the proposed septic and the edge of the setback for the wetland? Is that approximately?
Yeah.
Okay. The only reason I sort of flagged that and nothing comes to mind is if your septic fails or overflows, you're going downhill right into that.
Yeah, and we did do another test bit, and the chances are we're going to use that other location.
Okay.
Say again?
That's bit number 3.
Oh, test bit number 3?
Yeah.
That's downhill too, I mean,
But it's further away. Because it's really you can never plan for a failure, but you don't expect a failure, but if you can, there are certain steps that you can do in the design stage that will help mitigate any potential problems so that it doesn't immediately impact other aspects.
Is that anything we can address? I mean, we can't.
That's the state.
Yeah, so.
That would be the state, but as far as the design, I mean, the state has final say in the septic
so
design.
We don't address that anyway.
Well,
Well, we know where the test pits are, and it may
Right.
depend on whether it's a single family or a multifamily too,
right, that'll come in if they
so.
propose the next thing. Okay. Since the board seems to be fairly well satisfied, we'll look at the conditions, and these are drafted as per Mr. Burden. Add the proposed driveway on lot 21-1 to sheets 3 and 4. All necessary state, federal, and local permits. Except as specifically noted below. Do we have any exceptions?
Septic.
Oh, yes,
Because the
okay.
septic
Okay,
area.
okay.
So
Sorry.
we have been requiring a state-approved septic design as a condition of approval, but we've been tying that to building permit instead of the signing of plans so that
Okay.
that can take place later in the process.
Okay.
Excuse me, going back up to number 1, if we approve the waiver, should we not add a part B to add the waiver note?
I think that's been taken care of by putting the condition on the waiver itself.
Oh, okay.
But good to note it.
Oh, you're saying
We
The
approved
condition of getting the waiver is it
waiver was
goes
to put
into
that
effect
on. Oh, okay.
when they actually put it on the plan.
Yep.
And it wouldn't go into effect until the plans are signed anyway.
And he's sneaky in that respect.
I didn't want to presume that the board was going to approve the waiver by putting it as a condition of approval of.
Okay. Okay, so essentially federal, all permits except for septic, signed copies, plat recorded with the RCRD, and provide a state-approved septic design. Okay. Is a 1-year time frame enough to get the recorded? We can go for more if you want.
No, the project recorded tomorrow.
Did the state, have they approved the plan you have for the septic? Or is that still pending?
They approved they approved the state subdivision approval, which is for the new lot. The big 10-acre lot doesn't require state sub,
Right.
because it's over 5 acres. So the approval we got today is for the 2.41 acres, and the existing leach field is an approved leach field that's in place, which the building inspector will deal with the builder.
Okay. So those are fairly well documented. I'm not going to read them again. Since we're being fairly quiet, any further comment? I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Oh, sorry, Joe, didn't want to
Let's
step
go
on
on
you.
second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
With conditions as stated.
Yes.
Okay. Second?
Jeff seconded.
Joe seconded. Okay. Motion by Mr. Kreider, second by Mr. McCaffrey to approve 18-12. Comment? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay.
Thank you.
You're good to go. Here's a quick quiz for you, Mr. Frankowitz. What did I not provide you? Good job. Either that or I'm getting a reputation. Okay. So we will papers together here. Move to a preliminary consult with Mr. Frankwitz on this same lot. Note that for a preliminary consult, comments made from both from the applicant, town staff, and the planning board are, where do I want to look for?
Non-binding.
Thank you. Non-binding. So, what do you have for us?
We got large plans and smaller plans.
Okay.
Are the large plans the same as the small plans?
They're the same, right?
Yeah, they're all the same.
I'll go for small.
Yes,
I always get accused of knocking
I know.
the
I only did one so far.
There aren't enough, maybe you can share. I don't know if there are
Watching.
plenty. Okay. Good to know. Just double checking.
And I do have the 3 plans that I passed out up there. I can flip over them once we get moving. So we're looking at this as a multifamily, and the location would be pretty much, a little bit back further, but pretty close to where the house is existing right now on the lot. It would be the 10.04 acres. It would be 7.89 we're proposing to put in open space, which is the shaded area on the plan, which includes all the wetlands on the property. There's some steep slopes down by the wetland and stuff, and that would be all put into open space, which he would have to create a condo association that would have to manage that. There's frontage on Old Turnpike Road, about 678 feet of frontage, and the driveway, as we talked about, would be moved to the 50 feet if this was to go forward. We are proposing to do 1 leach field to service the units, and each unit would have an individual tank, and then there would be 2 wells. He could do it with 1 well, but he's probably going to, depending on the yield, do it 2 wells to service the 5 units. It would be 1 building, and in those smaller plan sets, I don't think in the large one, there is some architectural drawings of what he would propose as the unit. It would be one building, and they would be offset as you go down, so it wouldn't be just one flat front building. It would have some character to it. The proposal, though, is to shield it from the road with the buffer that's there and not disturb that buffer along Old Turnpike Road, other than they get the driveway in.
Yeah.
We're proposing two parking spaces per unit with 2 additional right in front of the units, and then across from the access road there'd be an overflow parking of about 7 spaces. 7 cars could fit there, and that would be gravel. Like the site with 2 small parking.
Say that again.
Yeah.
Is that?
For those,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. It's on sheet 2 or sheet 4 is numbered. Now I get it.
so
Essentially,
they'd be parking parallel to the road then.
Exactly.
So like I was saying about the septic earlier, we may use that other test pit on here. We're showing it directly across from the unit, so it wouldn't be down on that slope towards the wetland.
Sure.
We had a preliminary lighting design done with 2 lights, just one at either end of the parking, and then of course you'd have your door lights on all the units to light up the walkways up to the units. 1 dumpster, and that dumpster would be just as you come in to the right, shielded from the units and against the tree line, so it would be blocked from every direction. There would be a couple of waivers or 1 waiver we like to request, and it would be the width of the driveway. He's done a lot of conservation subdivisions in Deerfield and other places, and brought the pavement down as small as 18 feet wide for a subdivision. So we would put a waiver in asking for that where 22 is required. And I do have 1 question about the drainage. It doesn't appear, of course, we're going to have to do drainage analysis for ourselves, but it's not over 20,000 square feet. And in the regulations, it's not required if you don't disturb more than 20,000 square feet.
Could you, just to back up slightly,
You'll be
Dropping-
disturbing less than 20,000 square feet for all of
Right.
this?
Right.
the,
On preliminary calculations, it's right around 15,000.
oh, before we get into the 22 feet dropping to 18, what's the,
We can't get into anything that would be part of the public hearing as far as details.
Right, right.
So there was no notice public hearing for this. This is not a full design review where the board
Yeah.
would be able to give minute feedback on specific aspects of the
bring it
application.
up, I just,
So discussion needs to remain general and related primarily to process.
well, if it's a presentation where we don't ask any questions, it's not as useful as it might be.
But you could at least
Okay,
make
so-
comments on the lighting and say you'd prefer to see the lighting facing down.
What?
You could say you'd prefer to see lighting facing down
Why?
to avoid lighting up the night sky.
I know, but that's getting into particulars. We're getting a story that we can't
Can't get into the
The-
detail.
Yeah, the,
comment on detail.
I can't read the number. How wide are they? Even with my glasses, I can't read them.
I should have got the big one.
looks like 20 feet, 20 by 27, or 19 by 27.
19.
19 feet wide, each
Parking of the units.
The units itself.
I believe the units are just over 20 feet wide by 40 some deep.
It says 19
You have 19 by
Is that what-
27.
okay.
Which seems kind of tiny.
It's about the size of my, well, what, two-story?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it would work out to be, with a basement,
yeah.
that would work out to be about 1,600, 1,800 feet. About the size of my house.
What's the size of the normal one?
Yeah,
Says there
two-
1,000
Pardon?
square footage?
Yeah, it's 1,000 square feet
1,000
total.
square feet.
1,000 square feet?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
500,
you're adding
500.
the basement in.
Yeah, you're in the
Yeah,
basement.
I'm a walkout basement.
No, but here, this just,
Yeah.
Do these
which it
have
doesn't look like
basements?
they have it.
Yeah, there would be a full
It's a
basement.
bulkhead, right? There's a bulkhead.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah, so then
That might,
this total, well,
well, no,
you can't live in the bottom, but
no, you
There'd
can't,
be
live- it's
15
not a bedroom, but
1,500 square feet of space
Right.
in the building itself.
you can't count the man cave.
Yeah, yeah,
or shop,
There you go.
or craft room, whatever you want to call it.
yeah. What about a sewing room?
I have one in my basement.
The
Where's all this straw?
only put it on my, because I've dealt with it in another location, the only thing you would want to consider, you're close enough to the crest of the, or the height of that lot. So I don't think you're going to have too many issues of water draining from the top of it into the bulkhead,
Yeah.
which is good.
Don't the bulkheads normally have a lip? I mean, all
Well,
the ones
yeah,
I've
but-
seen have
Yeah.
been,
And we would grade it so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there's a little bit of a grade coming away from the units from the back.
Like I said, you're at the height, so you're not going to, most of it's going to not drain toward the units. You get nice views, you'll get nice airflow. If you move the driveway out of the setback, how, obviously your radius is going to have to change.
Well, maybe.
or if you move the septic.
Well, just, you can move the septic down, but assuming you're keeping the lot, or
Yeah, then it would change the
the unit
radius.
location, but that you're gonna change the radius. I mean, 56,
Well, you've got, it's a 30-foot difference, isn't it? Where you started?
right. I don't know, how tight can you go on a road?
Well, for,
I mean, until you get into a turn. Just,
yeah,
again, general.
Usually it's 45 is usually the minimum center line for like a drive. This is kind of a road, but it isn't. It's,
Yeah,
it's
right.
kind of an in-between.
Exactly. You'd want, thinking you would sort of want to avoid a sharp turn
Right.
at the end.
Yeah.
But, okay.
As part of all site plan applications, the fire department is given the opportunity to comment.
They have or have not?
They are always given the
Oh, they
opportunity
are always given, yes.
Could you get a light?
to comment.
Apartment to the back.
Yeah, you could. But you would, why would you want to?
What's the basis for the heating fuel?
You, I mean, that's all that's the
I would imagine they would do oil.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no outside tanks then or anything like that?
We haven't got to that yet.
Yeah.
And you can change the orientation of the place. You're not going in the front of the house anymore if you do, but you just.
This is my copy of the
So
subdivision.
what's, this is delineated here as different colored. Is it just to show
Number 4 real quick. Page 4.
the separate area that's conserved?
We don't have it.
It's only on the
It's only
small
on the
ones.
small one.
So it's not-
Talking about this?
Yeah.
That would be proposed as open space, so
I'm
there'd be some
trying
type
to
of
read these numbers.
easement placed on it or
Oh, I see.
something to put it in protection, so it would never be developed.
2.
Got it, okay.
Is that gonna work?
These are 3.
I would also point out, I think according to New Hampshire state law, if the applicant submitted something showing that all of that was going to be open space and indicated it would be permanently conserved, that would be enforceable even in the absence of a formal easement.
I got you.
Right.
Well, part of it is the numbers are blurred because it's small property.
I think the only, no, if you indicated with the shown proposed driveway that any lights as I'm exiting from one of the units in the parking area would be blocked by the trees shining into the existing building in the adjacent lot. So that's nice. Yep.
Scott, I would agree regarding a drainage analysis and stormwater management plan. It says that they shall be submitted for any site development that involves cumulatively disturbing 20,000 square feet or more, or construction of a street or road, and or that disturbs environmentally critical areas.
So you agree
So
if
I would
don't
agree
go-
with you that if the cumulative disturbance is under 20,000 square feet, that you would not need to do a full stormwater management plan and drainage analysis. But I would ask to be sure that we have that figure of estimated disturbance on the plan.
Yeah.
What is the acreage of the portion where the 5 units are that you have designated?
Where the 5 units would go, it's 2.16.
216?
So then 7 point something for the other.
7.89 is proposed.
Other questions, comments?
Well, I tried to make a comment.
Got it too.
General questions, general comments.
Save them up for the next meeting.
I've written them all down.
This is general
Actually, it wasn't
preliminary.
a comment, it was a question. Good stuff.
Okay. That looks good.
Now, this, can I just further, the test pit is that's a modified, or that's the number 3 that you're utilizing? You had a number 3 on the previous plan as a test pit that you had done?
Yeah, all three of
And you're
those.
utilizing it perhaps in this?
Yeah, that's where we're thinking right now. It hasn't been designed yet, but that, the way the drainage would go and everything else, that makes sense to put it over there instead of at the end.
Anything else? Good.
Thank you.
If someone has one of the small steps, could they put it over this way?
I wrote on mine.
I already wrote on
I
mine.
just want to look at it and give it back. You want it back?
She's already reneging.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. For a preliminary consult, we don't have public comment.
But you got a chance to see.
You got a chance to see it.
Because that was your question
Plans.
before, kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you can make up all your questions and come back.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
May he take the drawings along, unless they see this?
They're
Do you
They're
want,
public documents.
public documents.
do you want the document? The drawing?
Yeah. Can I have
Help
it?
yourself,
Yeah,
yeah.
take them both.
Great. And this is yours, Linda.
Yeah,
Yes.
go, take out two.
There's a copy, I have a copy here that I didn't write
Okay,
in.
sure, take it.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I have one.
Full size.
Yeah.
And when you're drawing your drawings, you put the
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Tom.
Dining room.
You're pretty much like the condo I had in Northwood in the 70s.
Okay. We have a letter.
So, Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I can walk the board through a little bit of process, and then I would suggest that we take a brief recess to allow the board time to read and process the documents that I handed out. We received a letter from Scott Martin regarding subdivision 18-10, which was an amendment to a prior subdivision that the board approved at its July meeting to relocate to change a prior approval for a shared driveway to allow closure of one access point on that property and the addition of a new driveway on a separate property. We are within the 30-day appeal window. Mr. Martin submitted the letter dated August 16th to the town. We consulted with the town's attorney regarding the appropriate response to that letter, and council said that the correct interpretation of the letter as written was that it was a request for the planning board to reconsider its decision. Mr. Martin can also, within the 30-day appeal period, avail himself to the opportunity to appeal the board's decision to Superior Court. He could also appeal the board's decision to the zoning board on the grounds of similar allegations that he makes in this letter, that the board's approval was based on a faulty understanding of the zoning ordinance. Whether or not he avails himself of either of those options is not relevant to what the board needs to determine in terms of a request to reconsider. We received and determined that this was the appropriate process too late to notice a public hearing. So there will be no additional input from the public regarding this matter. What you have in front of you is an item of correspondence asking you to reconsider. You will be deliberating based upon the correspondence that you've received. The question that you are answering tonight is whether or not you will reconsider your decision. If the mechanism by which you would do that, if you so wish, would be to make a motion to reconsider. That motion must include a reason for reconsidering your decision. Because Mr. Martin asked is not a reason. You need to give a rationale for why the board should reopen the case. If the board decides to reopen the case, at that point we would discuss setting a date for a future public hearing at which that reconsideration will occur. I will be perfectly honest, I am not entirely sure of the process for a planning board reconsidering its decision. This is an option, but it is not a common option. So in the meantime, staff would be reaching back out to council to make sure that whatever process we follow for this is the correct one and that there would be no further legal questions about the process we follow for that reconsideration.
Is the applicant aware of this?
The applicant was represented by Mr. Frankowitz. I notified him earlier today.
Okay.
We made the decision that this was the appropriate step to follow yesterday.
Right.
And per statute, the board needs to decide whether it will reconsider within the 30-day appeal period. So you need to answer that question, yes or no, of whether you will reconsider this tonight. Any of the actual reconsidering would happen at a future date with the opportunity for public input. That will be a duly noted public hearing. The notice cost would be borne by the town.
Are you saying that in order to discuss this, we have to do it under a motion to reconsider, or can it be discussed independent or before such a motion?
I would say you could do some very bare bones discussion of process. If the board chose to dismiss it out of hand, there would not necessarily need to be a motion. If there was a motion and it did not get a second, that might be an indication of where the board is leaning. Whether there's a failure to make a motion, the motion doesn't get a second, or the motion gets a second and then fails, all three of those would have the same effect of the board deciding not to reconsider its case. And we would notify Mr. Martin of that.
But I'm getting at also is, can we discuss this, because we received the letter, can we merely discuss or make note of the letter that we received and discuss it before? Because you're saying if there's a motion to reconsider this, and you've indicated there has to be a positive reason beyond just the fact that we got the letter.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to do some preliminary, just recapping or discussion.
I sort of agree with Joe, because I'd like to understand and know a few things in order to be knowledgeable when I either vote on reconsideration or propose reconsideration. That's kind of hard to do without at least some...
So I would say let's treat this like an application where if you have questions of fact, you can pose those to staff before there is a motion. If there are discussion points of the merits of whether or not to reconsider, hold those until a motion has been made and seconded.
Okay.
I passed out at the beginning of the evening, and I should have extra copy a set of 4 documents. So the top one is Mr. Martin's letter dated
Right.
August 16th.
Yep,
The next one is the town's response to Mr. Martin.
right.
This was made after consulting with town council, just to make sure that we were responding appropriately as far as the process was concerned. The third is a 4-page document, 2 sheets of paper, front and back. That is, I've pulled all of the relevant materials from the zoning ordinance. So that includes 4 definitions, the one for driveway, the one for a setback, the one for a setback related to a water body, and the definition of a structure. I've included language from a proposed ballot amendment that went to town meeting in 2017. That ballot amendment was not passed. That ballot amendment failed. And the reason I've included that is because it has some bearing on the interpretation of information within the definition of a structure. It was an attempt to clarify that meaning in one direction, and the town decided that that was not what it wanted the definition of structure to mean. I've included information from the section 4B4 regarding setbacks. That's not the entirety of section 4B4. I left off some irrelevant sections at the end to save space. I've also added a note under item B, structure setbacks, just indicating that the minimum structure setbacks from both the property line and the wetland setback would be 20 feet in this case, rather than paste the entire table in here. And then I've also added language from the Wetland Conservation Overlay District that includes permitted uses, including the discussion of driveway crossings, as well as uses allowed by special exception, and the burden of proof that those would need to meet. And then finally, also from that section, the portion regarding setbacks within the Wetland Conservation Overlay District. The final sheet that I've given you is just the staff report that I had given you with the case at that time. So I would say first we should probably just take a recess so that you have the opportunity to look back through these materials, familiarize yourself with them, and then we can come back and discuss any follow-up questions that you might have for staff.
James, just to recap part of what you said, this is your own edited...
These are excerpts from the development ordinance.
Yeah, relevant, what you think are relevant to this situation.
Correct.
Can you, so he says if you refer to the development ordinance and refer to page 10 on definition of driveway, that's the first 3 lines on your
Yes,
handout?
that is the same definition of driveway that I've excerpted.
And then where is page 14? Clearly states that a driveway is a structure.
That would also be the definition of structure that I've excerpted there.
So page 10 and then page 14. So what's the 2 sections in between? What pages are those?
Those, if you'll give me a minute to flip. The definition of setback and setback water body both appear on page 13. The definition of structure that I've excerpted does appear on page 14.
Okay.
The definition of driveway that I've excerpted does appear on page 10.
Well, I'm only asking because he noted 2 specific pages, page 10 and page 14. So I just wanted to make sure I knew what he was looking at.
Those are the definitions that he's referring to.
Just those 2 are the ones that he's quoting.
Correct. And then I've
Okay,
added the definitions of setbacks
And then
as
you're
well.
providing
here.
all the other information.
Correct.
Okay, so so just to make sure I understand, he only refers to the first and fourth paragraphs you've included 2 other paragraphs because they're also definitions.
These are all sections of code that I looked at and considered when preparing my staff report. So this was sort of the large-scale universe of what I considered to be relevant passages that include the passages that Mr. Martin cited specifically.
And then just a somewhat related question. I don't remember this plot of land being in the conservation overlay district.
The wetland conservation overlay district applies to anything that is determined to be a wetland.
Okay. Thank you.
And the
Oh, so it's
wetland-
not a designated area. Anything that's
correct.
wet, we
Anything
consider.
that meets the determination of a wetland as shown by a certified wetlands
Okay.
specialist
Okay.
is considered to be part of this overlay, and the provisions apply.
Okay, great. Thank you, James. I just want to make sure I knew exactly what they were referring to.
So I would suggest maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we can say when we're done. That might be
How's
sooner.
that, Bob? 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, we're back from whatever you want to call that,
Recess.
recess, I guess, at 8:18 for the, discussing the request for rehearing.
Well, just ask again, can we do some preliminary discussion? I wonder-
So again, I would say if there are questions of process, questions of fact, questions of interpretation that you have that are factual, feel free to ask those or bring those up now. If you want to discuss the merits of whether or not to reconsider, hold that until after we've made someone has made a motion and it's been seconded.
I have a question of fact.
So do I. Go ahead.
Well, actually, maybe it's not a question of fact. Maybe it's a legal question. So if, as we have in the definition of structure, we say that something is a structure and then provide a list, i.e. including but not limited to, and then we specifically list off things including driveways with a man-made surface. In the immediate next sentence, it says fences, stone walls, and driveways. Does that refer to driveways with man-made structures or surface? Or does that just refer to driveways in general now at this point?
So I'm going to preface any of my further comments tonight by saying that I am not a land use attorney. I am an urban planner.
Yeah?
I am not qualified to give legal advice. Staff's interpretation of that section, because it includes the specific mention of man-made surface,
Right.
has been that driveways of man-made surface, driveways that are paved, count as structures, and that driveways of natural surface, which we've interpreted to be dirt or gravel, are not structures.
Okay, but that's not explicitly stated here, correct?
It is not explicitly stated.
Correct.
The
Okay.
reason that I included the proposed ballot amendment from 2017 was that the planning board attempted to address that very discrepancy, and the solution that the board proposed was to opt in favor of an interpretation that all driveways are structures.
Okay.
And that interpretation, or that proposal, was rejected by voters.
Okay, but at that point, when we proposed it on the ballot, we could have also proposed fences, stone walls, and driveways with a man-made surface. We could have just
You
inserted...
could alternatively have decided that what you wanted to propose to be the unambiguous interpretation, B, driveways with a man-made surface.
Right. So we chose to go one way, but it was not the only way that we could have gone.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Then the second related question, no, I'll let Bob ask his question first.
I had the exact same question.
Oh,
So go
okay.
ahead.
Okay, so then, I guess,
Before you go off,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just regarding the driveway. This is all under the heading, structure, and then
Yeah.
it colon defines. And then it says, among other things, then it says, and driveways with a man-made surface. Then following that, and obviously it opens a little confusion, which is what's happening, but
Yes,
fences, stone walls, and driveways are structures. Now, it's just defined, though, the structure, because it's under the heading of structure, is a driveway with a man-made surface. So really, it stands, it's a little bit of, not as super precise as it might be, but it is defined. It is
Because it would be
defined.
redundant to define it
no,
again.
because not limited to could also include driveways witut a man-made surface.
And if
And
you,
it doesn't say that.
No,
To
it
jump
says
in.
those are not limited to or other things that aren't mentioned. These are
Right.
the things that are mentioned, and
Right.
what is mentioned.
So
is-
I do also want to bring this back. What we were deciding tonight is not the correct interpretation of this section. It's whether there is sufficient merit to Mr. Martin's arguments to warrant a reconsideration, at which point the board should come to a conclusion about the correct way to interpret this.
Well,
So you can decide that we're enough on the same page that we agree we got it right, or you could decide that we're either not enough on the same page or we think there's enough of a possibility that it could have been interpreted differently that we should take another look at this. So you don't have to necessarily agree on an interpretation of that or any other section tonight.
Well, the definition, though, is the one that Mr. Martin brings up as one of his two
Yeah, it's one of his 2 points.
He refers specifically to the page this came from, structure, driveway. And I mean, our understanding of it, the fact that we could have written it better at the town as an amendment to the ordinance is a moot point. My observation is here that it does define, and it doesn't reiterate in the next sentence, but it's already defined it. And once you've done that within any document, you've made a definition. You can use a word after that, or words, and they are, it seems to me, that continue under that definition that you've already made clear. Anyway, that's the way I'm seeing that, but Mr. Martin is pegging part of his argument on that, and then the other part is, that's what we were asking about before. There's page 14, he's also concerned with. One of the things that, just to say, that night, we discussed the difference between structures. We discussed our understanding. I spoke to Mr. Martin directly when he was sitting there because we were having a colloquy, and we were all participating. But it was just we were conversing and making clear things, and we made clear to him that our understanding was, and supported by what we have as an ordinance, that and it was clear to the applicant at the time that as long as this didn't become a paved surface, a structure, that we were approving because there was no setback requirement. This driveway, as proposed, went right up next to the line. I think maybe it was 5 or 8 feet or something like that. It wasn't hard on the line. And that was what Mr. Martin was objecting. He wanted to see at least 20 feet. And then his argument was because if it was going to be 20 feet, that puts you over into the wetland a little bit. And then there was a discussion of the old wetland versus the currently surveyed wetland.
Right.
And that was another matter. But
Joe,
as we approved it, the driveway was delineated as missing that wetland based on its ability to get near the property
With the
line because it's not a structure. And that
Right.
was,
So-
that's,
Yeah,
okay.
so Mr. Martin did not object originally when the driveway to this lot went through the wetlands, because that's where it was gonna go in. So he didn't object to it going through the wetlands.
Back then, you mean earlier?
Yeah,
original?
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
this right here, this was the original driveway in,
Yes.
and it went through the wetlands. So he didn't object to somebody going through the wetlands.
Apparently not, we didn't get any letters then.
We didn't get any letters then, and going through this wetlands would have required, state approvals and blah, 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 blah. So if this driveway were to have to move over 20 more feet, the driveway would still go through this way. It's only a question of whether the applicant, in this case, if it's redone, would have to go for permits.
Right, but that way is far smaller than this way.
Yeah, no, I understand, but either way, to me, so it's only a question of whether somebody would have to get permits for this short section. And that's really all it comes down to. And
I would caution us away from going too far into the site plan itself, where things are located, because if this is reconsidered, there should be another public hearing to have input on all of those items. I would want to stay as close as possible to the code and whether we feel that Mr. Martin's allegations are that raise a significant enough concern that the board would want to reconsider.
Well, okay, as a matter of fact, too, then he makes an assertion. This was in his first letter, 16th and 22nd, in between Board Administrator Linda Smith replied to him, and then he came back August 22nd, as I read it. I do stand behind my assertion. He said, did not have the authority. And he says we don't have the authority. As a matter of fact, my best understanding of everything was we do have and did have the authority.
So, Mr. Martin makes the allegation that the board does not have the authority to override a development ordinance where that setback is spelled out.
But we did
The position that I outlined in my staff report is not that the board should ignore a setback or that the board should waive or vary or in any way fail to implement the zoning ordinance as it stands. My assertion in my staff report and that I want to put back on the record is that staff's interpretation was that the application as provided to this board was compliant with that zoning code.
And that was part of the discussion.
So the discussion that the board should have is whether or not that was a correct interpretation of the zoning code or whether staff should have made a different determination based upon an alternate interpretation of the zoning code. But we have not asserted that the board has the authority to alter the development ordinance through its actions on a subdivision approval.
Well, Jason, what you said and sort of my recollection, we've had this definition of non-paved or non-man-made driveways not being structures for quite a while. And I guess what I'm struggling with is what would any further discussion on our part help in terms of resolving it? And I don't think it would. And as you said earlier, James, one of his remedies is to maybe go to the zoning board, but one of the other options is to go to the court and have the court rule, did we interpret this correctly or not? And I think nothing short of the court deciding whether we interpreted it correctly or not, and have been interpreting it, for years that way.
For how many other cases, right?
I don't think anything else will give a definitive answer to this. And so I think reconsideration does not help him move the ball down the court one iota, and it would just be a waste of his and our time.
So I will say the board is not necessarily bound by the precedent of how it has interpreted things in the past if, upon further consideration, it doesn't feel that that's the correct interpretation. It is
Well, I'm not saying
within...
that. I'm not saying that because everybody here, certainly, and everybody in the past has always said it the same way, as evidenced even by the fact that we tried to put it on a proposed amendment to specifically change it. So I think we've been pretty consistent, and that's one of my goals, is to be consistent here. So
Just to say, I mean, to try to put an interpretation on why that amendment was proposed, I think there were probably a couple of reasons, and it might well have been, there could have been...
Could have been other reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Not just, but
gotcha.
in light of what you just said, though, he makes the assertion, and this is a matter, again, we're addressing, it says on page 14, and James is already, that's the reference to structure, which we just talked about. But he says it clearly states that a driveway is a structure. And it doesn't clearly state that. It says it in a secondary position.
Right.
At best, you could argue that, it's a little confusing, but you certainly don't have clearly states because the preceding sentence says driveways with a man-made surface, and the title or this paragraph is all about structures. It's all about structures, and one of them is driveways with a man-made surface. Doesn't mention natural or gravel or anything else. Doesn't get off into that. It makes specific man-made. Anyway, so it's not clear. He's making the assertion that we faulted because, for one thing, we acted against what's clear. No, it isn't clear. Maybe it's clear to him, but he's ignoring the preceding sentence for some reason. I don't know what that's all about. Then he goes into the wetland thing, because obviously if you start moving this driveway around, as it was proposed and as we accepted, you now push it over into some place where, maybe the wetland comes into play. But as we approved it, it wasn't at play. Right. We discussed the wetland as currently, we went pretty thoroughly with this. We spent a fair amount of time considering the case that night. If I remember, there was an hour or two involved at least. His assertions are not complete. They're not. I'm simply say they're not valid. They're being partly true, or in his view, okay, but I don't see any clearness, and therefore we are at fault. I think we interpreted it as it's written, and we discussed it to his benefit that night.
Right.
Now, I certainly did, and I think several others did.
Which is why I say us rehashing it again at a public hearing, taking more people's time, isn't going to really move the ball one way or the other.
Not unless we're going to reverse our decision, because new information, as James just pointed out, you can make a different decision because in the light of, new information, or, there was something new, and we don't have anything new that changed anything.
I mean, I understand.
We also discussed consulting a wetlands person for the delineation to see if it had moved, and decided it wasn't necessary.
Right, yeah, we're pretty certain the wetlands are legally where they should be.
What do we have to tell them if we decide not to reconsider it? What do we have to lay out?
Staff would reach out and say, upon consideration, the board has decided not to reconsider. There really isn't that much more to tell him, because by not reconsidering, you are saying you stand by the decision that you've already made.
Okay.
And he would still have the opportunity as
it.
long as it's within the 30-day appeal window, to avail himself of other opportunities.
Okay.
I think
Do we
it's,
need a motion, or I'm sorry.
I think that
We need a motion.
I would like a motion one way or the other, either a motion to reconsider or a motion not to
I'm going to
reconsider.
make a motion not to reconsider. I don't know if
I'll second
everybody-
it.
Unless somebody's got more to
I
say.
think we're on the same page.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Mr. Kreider to not reconsider 18-10. Discussion. I haven't totally made up my mind, but on the definitions, yes, I think we did.
Well, make a case for something
Well,
else.
I think what we haven't discussed is the aspects of, and actually before I open my mouth any further, I want to look at the plans.
That's good, I brought these along. Yeah.
Yes.
I
was proud that you did.
Fray here. Yeah,
See, his thought is that if this gets bumped over 20 feet, it's into this little tail here, probably.
yeah.
No, I think the question of interpretation is if the
Well, I'm
way.
just saying if this driveway is forced to be a structure and then 20
Yes.
feet off, that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
20 feet there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then that just means he has to get a wetlands permit.
Right.
It doesn't change the fact that they could still put the driveway through in that general area.
Well, we talked about that too. So you get the wetlands permit to put a culvert in or whatever the state says they
Yeah.
want, and it's
But
the
didn't
same
Linda
result.
say the state would say move it over?
Yeah, the state would probably
Right.
say
Yeah.
that,
We talked about that.
Move it to the center.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, that's why I say, I don't know that we could really, I wouldn't know what to say to change our decision. So I don't know,
Negates my point, which was fine, or my concern,
I
so
think somebody just doesn't like the fact that it was subdivided.
let's not state that in public, please. Okay, so motion to not reconsider is being discussed. Do we have further questions, comments? Ready for a vote?
So to clarify, an aye vote means that it will not be reconsidered.
Correct.
A nay vote means that that motion fails and we're still talking.
yes.
Correct.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay, motion passes.
I would just comment on
6-0, was it
6-0, correct, it was
Thank you.
unanimous.
as is usual the case, let's just make sure we're real diplomatic when we mention this to him. Reading the news. I
Now,
mean, I've never had an occasion where I've heard otherwise, but let's just make sure we're diplomatic.
Bob,
And just for, I won't say argument's sake, but for process, now that we have decided not to reconsider 1810, but we're still within the appeal timeframe, Mr. Martin theoretically could, if he chooses.
If he so
either-
chose, he could avail himself of the opportunity, of other opportunities to appeal.
Yes, through the ZBA or Superior Court.
The date of the decision was July 26th. So he has 30 days from that time to determine which, if any, of those other two options.
it's about like 8 feet or 10 feet.
Right, but it's
Which is
ground,
Monday.
I think.
Yes. No,
Right?
Which is, yes, Monday.
Monday.
So I would suggest
We have to let him know by
contact him
tomorrow.
first thing in the morning. Not that you probably wouldn't, or figured that already, but just double check it. Okay.
What about the rest of the letter? Do we address that at all? He makes a reference to Harding in our decision. Or
Yeah.
The issue with authority is based on the definitions. because the definitions are defined in the zoning ordinance, we don't have the ability to modify the zoning ordinance as a board.
Right.
That's
No, Ms. Martin's letter,
Mhm.
in that same, in the second letter, he goes over, he reiterates that he says, I do stand by my decision. Then he goes into, in the
Assertion
next
that-
paragraph, he goes into Harding.
Right.
We don't want to discuss
Yeah,
it any further.
Harding
at this
has nothing to
point.
do with it.
Well, no, it has nothing to do with that. What I'm now asking is, if we've cleared that up and we've had a vote, do we
We have to
address
discuss-
this tonight, or what? I mean, in other words, we have a letter here which is, he's now got two issues.
You had the, a motion not to reconsider that has passed. So unless the board wanted to actually draft correspondence back to Mr. Martin, which I would not suggest, I would say this issue has been dealt with and it's closed.
Well, James, we only considered, what we voted on just now was not to reconsider the driveway, and I don't know the lot name here and so forth, but whether a driveway is a structure or not, et cetera. Or a gravel driveway in this case is a structure or not. But he tagged on to, his first letter was all about what we just voted on.
Right.
His additional statements were to clarify the intent of what he was challenging and what he intended or wanted the board to act upon.
Yeah, but then.
Right, is it
They went
driveway
into
now?
He's talking about Harding, whether we need to
We
address
brought
Harding.
up the second issue.
No,
Right,
you
but his
don't
letter-
need to address Harding.
His letter
If
for
there's-
us doesn't have a second issue. It says, Dear Planning Board, it doesn't have
What's
that.
that?
Yes.
That additional
He's just-
clarification where he mentions Harding Metals,
Yeah.
that's not an issue for the planning
seemed to
board to
me-
discuss.
Yeah, okay. It seemed to me it's primarily a state issue that he's exercising.
It is a
about.
state issue.
Okay.
Recommendations. Okay. Okay, so we discussed the rehearing. We have a Cooper Hill discussion.
Yes. I spoke with, well, I don't have his name in front of me, one of the
Bill
engineers.
Is it Bill Shedd?
Yeah.
Is it Bill?
Yeah. I don't think it's Bill though.
It's not.
Anyway, an engineer at DOT named, last name of Shutt, S-H-U-T-T, I think. And he is requesting a meeting. He said he is at a point where he is, came to a decision on the driveway permit, and because the planning board sent a letter and we had different correspondence go back and forth relative to that driveway permit, before he signs off, he would like the opportunity to meet with staff and with the chairman. The reason was that you had, on behalf of the planning board, had written the letter. And so procedure would be that the board, for you to attend, would just need to vote to authorize you to do that on their behalf.
Okay.
Well, I think it would need to be a little bit clearer than that. If it was just an informational session,
it's just
any of them
information.
could attend. If there is potentially going to be an issue where the chair would need to represent the board, I think the authorization would need to be to represent them in the matter of potential solutions to that driveway.
But not as a matter of a decision as to how it shall be,
Correct.
I mean,
So if you
at
don't
this
feel it's
point,
necessary,
it's
that's
DOT's
fine.
purview.
So it's DOT's decision.
Right.
So there shouldn't,
We don't have.
so they're just, in a sense, they're just going to be transferring information?
they're reaching back out as a courtesy. They
Right.
have asked for SRPC's transportation planner to be part of this meeting. They reached out to SRPC separately to compile crash data for that stretch of 4-202 First New Hampshire Turnpike, etc. So that information that we compiled for them and sent back to them, Colin was taking the lead on that, and I'm sure that factored in part into DOT's decision-making process, which is why they would like SRPC to be involved as well.
So this is.
So it's a matter of whether or not the board would choose to authorize Bob to represent them and act on their behalf in this matter. If you do and Bob shows up and it's just information, no harm done. If you don't and Bob shows up and there's some negotiating to do, he can't do it and he has to come back and we have to go back and forth. We don't know for sure that there is really going to be any follow-up or negotiation or further discussion of the board's position. Technically, DOT has the purview to do what it wants because this is their permit and their process.
But our approval was based on their.
Our approval requires the applicant to acquire a DOT driveway permit.
My suspicion.
Separately, we sent a letter requesting that DOT consider whether there are any engineered solutions that would make that less of a conflict issue. But the board no longer has any control over what exactions may or may not be made related to that driveway permit. That is now a DOT issue. So if DOT says, I want to do X, the board really is in a position to say, no, you have to do something else.
My suspicion.
Well, if I can add a comment as to the discussion I had with him specifically was, I think the reason he wanted Bob was basically he said, I can just sign off on this and the driveway permit's done. But I would like the chairman to be there so that he could possibly, knowing the board's deliberations throughout, I think he's seeking something to the effect of, do you think this is acceptable to the board? I don't think it goes beyond, and if it, I mean, he's just looking for some feedback. I don't think he's looking at, if you don't like this, we're going to do something else. I don't think they're at that point.
Based on what you're saying now, though, he's not really at a final decision on it.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
It sounds like he's had a final decision.
I think it's a
you put it a little
courtesy.
differently then, so I just.
No, I think
We're
he is.
interpreting this as more of a courtesy and a good
Okay.
process decision
All right.
than anything else.
Courtesy. All right.
And he would like to work with the planning board through Bob just to get feedback as to, you know, what do you think of this?
Yep.
But I think they're going to do it regardless.
Bob, are you,
I'm fine.
Err on the side of caution and,
I'm fine.
you understand, I mean, you
Oh, yeah.
certainly
Yeah, he knows all the rules.
expressed some of the
what?
concerns.
You know
that
all the
we all had.
rules and.
I don't know if I know all the rules, but we
Well, I'm
don't
talking,
have,
our
we
concerns.
don't have a role in this process
Right.
because it's DOT. It's DOT, you know, saying, we are the state, we have the authority to do it. You questioned some of our decisions or brought up some valid points. Here's what we are proposing. What do you think?
Are you comfortable, I mean.
I'm comfortable doing it.
Okay.
I have no
Okay,
problem.
but, and our concerns were the congestion that might
Exactly.
occur here, you know, under
Especially as
this,
it's
that,
a
and
two-lane
So
road.
I have a question. This was before I came on, so I don't understand what you're talking about. I've been lost.
This is,
it was,
So this is the site plan application by Cooper Hill Pizza. There was a partial expansion of the building. Related to that, they were also making significant improvements to their parking lot as far as delineating what are parking spaces, where are they, what is the driveway to enter this parking lot,
Not
and
that
where
big
is
span.
it
Closing
closing
it
off
off.
all of
Yeah.
the rest of it.
Make it nice.
Yeah.
So the board conditionally approved this last year. And since then, they've been working towards their conditions of approval, which include the DOT driveway permit. The board sent a letter to DOT for consideration of that driveway permit saying we have approved this. We're generally supportive of the design that we have approved, but we have some concerns about traffic, access to the site, potential conflict of turning traffic, that we would like you to take into consideration.
A big issue, just,
Can you give her the dates those things were discussed at the meeting, so she can watch the meetings on YouTube?
I could absolutely give you those dates if I knew them. We'd have to check on
I
them.
think it was June.
Because I don't know what I was looking for.
Don't you have that with you, Hal?
No, I was going to just ask you, as preparation for
There's-
becoming selectman, didn't you review all the planning board things for previous year?
We can
minutes
follow
on the
up
website.
and give you
Okay, all right,
at least
thank
the
you.
meeting dates that occurred.
Okay.
how about
We
you,
can
Gary?
find
Do you have the dates?
What? Oh, I can make all the copies, but I'm not looking them up.
There was an issue, and I think James summed it up well, but there was an issue, that there's going to be additional activity, that's their whole point, they want to get more business, and there's going to be more traffic, and they were improving the site in many ways, all good. The issue was the turning traffic into and out of the site, and how efficient or how much more congested or whatever that this might be, and that was where we were at a little bit of a loss because we were going on various information and we didn't have any really expertise to make a final judgment. And the state, I don't know that the state's concerned about congestion particularly, maybe, but
Yeah.
you think so?
I think so.
Okay, so that's a very heavy traffic.
Well, from, you say in the past, when I've dealt with DOT on design issues from many, many years ago and many jobs ago, if there are local concerns brought by elected or town staff, generally they weigh significantly more, or fairly heavily, because we're boots on the ground. And in this case, you know, we mentioned that the majority of the traffic or customers from into Cooper Hill come from the east. So they'd be turning left into the driveway. You know, you're waiting in there, there's no bypass zone, there's not enough curb to pull around, or you're up on the embankment, and that's really what we looked at.
Okay.
Or asked them to look at. And my suspicion is that that's what they've proposed, but I don't know.
Would you be comfortable with reiterating that? I mean, or if they don't give you, if it's, as Jim said, if this is merely courtesy, there may not be much open ears to a last-minute reiteration, but you're good with that, of just going over that to see if they considered it?
And it might be that the courtesy aspect or the request is to say, we did a traffic analysis and the turning aspect of it and the cost of a bypass lane or break, you know, bike, whatever you want to call it, is not worth it.
Well, I'll make a motion if, to authorize Bob to certainly go to the meeting, whether he likes, you know, he can go.
Represent the
whether we
planning board.
Represent the planning board, yeah.
I can put words in your mouth.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Mr. Mikulicki. Discussion?
No.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? I'm abstaining because it affects me. So, but- okay, thank you.
We have the dates for the law lecture,
We're good.
and the town pays for that if our,
Is this the one with the good lunch?
Yes.
Oh,
well, if you go
It
to the
depends.
Saturday one it is,
Yeah,
but
what's he say?
continental breakfast, that means you bring a bag lunch, I guess. I don't know.
All three of them.
But they've gone back to the Wednesday night ones again, which is nice for those who don't want to do an all-day Saturday, or they can, that way you can break them up if there's one or two or that you want to go to, you could go to the Wednesday night. But anyone who wants to go, just let us know, and you can sign yourself up, or we can sign you up, and as long as we know, we can get a check cut and mailed to them.
if you have not, well, I mean, most of us have been here, but there are 2 members in specific who haven't had a full term yet. If you have any questions about planning board and your role, I highly recommend the fundamentals. It is an excellent course.
So is it, you go to 1, or is it 3 sessions?
You go to 1.
Okay.
You just,
It's 3 sessions that it looks like they're doing on the Wednesday nights. They're rotating around the state at 3 different occasions. But if you went to the Saturday, October 20th, you would get all 3 sessions.
Right, so there's 3 lectures,
Yeah.
3 different lectures.
Yeah.
And Christine Fillmore, she's great. She's terrific on that one. As well as the others are all folks that are
Okay.
very knowledgeable.
Well, consider that.
Okay, great.
And certainly if you, Linda or Susan, if we have people who sign up, they'll certainly tell each other so that when all 3 of us are driving, or however many attend.
What's the deadline for responding, Linda? Did it say?
I think it's usually like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay, so-
the sooner the better. I mean,
Yeah.
I would,
I mean, first, yeah.
yeah, the first one's September 26th, so by the 10th or 12th of September would be good.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the first work, how about bring it back up at the September work session?
Okay.
Okay, and we brought about budget.
Okay, now on the budget, should have copied this the other way, but you have to. Do we have any more? Oh, no, I can put it down. The titles
Oh, I see.
are down below.
Yeah.
They weren't from the top page because that was at the bottom of the page. But if you
Yeah.
look down, you'll see what the columns represent. The first one is 2017, what was actually expended, and then the adopted budget, where we are to this point, what's been encumbered, and the percentages remaining. But what we really need to look at is under adopted budget, those lines, because those would either be adjusted up, down, or remain the same. And I don't know if I have to have the budget input into the program by September 10th, which is actually a few days before our work session. This came up very quickly, so
All right, Lucy.
we could do one of 2 things. We could make decisions tonight, or I could input a flatline budget if we don't want to get into this at 9 o'clock. If we do, fine, but if we don't, I could put in with the idea that it would be with a memo to the selectmen that it would be updated after that work session.
Well, could you answer just a couple questions on this though, Linda? Because I'm just looking at the contracted planned services for last year and then adopted budget. And there's a fairly big difference there.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Hal?
The first 2 columns, Linda. I mean, maybe I'm...
Second line.
Second row.
Second row.
The adopted budget?
Yeah, is that this year?
Well, the 14,536.
That is the adopted budget, the 28,639.
Yep.
That does include 2 things. It includes our contract with Stratford Regional relative to our planner service. It also includes the contract for the map geo.
Okay. Now, maybe I'm misunderstanding them. What's last year period? What does the first column mean then?
Actual expenditures for 2017. And we did go through a period of time when we did not have a planner in between Matt and
Oh, that's right.
James.
Yeah, that's right. I remember.
That's why the
yeah.
expenditures are less.
Okay.
And it was,
So-
Also didn't have the map geo then.
We don't-
Correct, we
So
did not have the map
We
geo.
added quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
So does this represent James at the pace that we're using him now?
Right, this is the
the second column.
proposed and adopted budget.
Yeah. Okay, but maybe I'm missing something. Does James' rate not go up next year?
We don't know that, and that's something that
James is hoping.
we have
for a
not had
raise.
an opportunity. James is not.
Well, James may get a raise, but James may get a raise, but the rate might not go up. I mean, it
That's
might.
true.
Yeah. But
I haven't had that discussion yet, so I don't think this is the place for it, but once we have
I think,
that.
so we have a new executive director. Whenever you have a change in leadership in an organization, they might reconsider how things were calculated or done in the past. So I don't think I could say definitively that our rates would go up, down, be calculated in a different way. And in terms of the amount that we use, that varies month to month. There have been some months that we've been over our estimated monthly amount for how much I would contribute. July was a very heavy month because we had a couple long meetings and I spent a lot of time reading through definitions. August is probably going to be a little bit under because I didn't go to the first meeting.
well, let me ask the question this way: the 28,639. How many hours does that represent?
We typically assume that, or at least as we've done it in the past, my current dues paying billing rate, Northwood pays dues, so you get me for a little bit cheaper, is $50 an hour. Clock, calculator, so if we assumed,
So 1,400 hours.
What do we get, a 2% discount, or what do we get? Remember?
Yeah, but I mean,
so if we were assuming that entire thing was applied to me as an hourly rate, that would be approximately 572 hours,
okay, but we got to subtract off Matt Geo, so
which
maybe
would
it's
be approximately 47 hours a month. Map Geo would also come out of that.
so like,
So probably like 40 hours.
and it's probably like 40. Okay, so there is, because I hate going right up to the limit, because if you get a busy season or something,
Exactly.
you could chew that all up.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah, and this,
A bit of my concern is that, do we know what percentage of the year we're through yet?
this is as of 7/27. However, it does not include the July billing, which was over the typical.
so we use,
In other words, we have
So
a
we're-
we used
contract,
almost exactly
not
half.
typically so many hours a month, but not to exceed X over the year. So it was over the monthly amount, but there's been months where it was
I
under,
want to
so
say
it was
close
a
to
non-issue.
50 hours.
what is the monthly amount?
We're in the ballpark of
So you had
50
to take
hours last
vacation.
month.
What is the
I'd have to
monthly?
go get the contract. Do you want me to do that?
No, I think,
No, how about the Map Geo? Just break that out.
Okay, I'm going to talk about that for just a minute,
Sure.
if I can.
Go
The
ahead.
MAP Geo, we're paying $1,000 a year for that. The town administrator, and when I was on vacation, but Susan and the town administrator, I don't know if anybody else was there, but we had been talking, there's been a lot of discussion over the last 2 or 3 years about going with having all of our assessing online.
yeah.
And we had talked about this before, we talked about the idea of getting Map Geo as a thing that was cost effective, that we could get right on board immediately and just plug in for that yearly amount. There is going to be an effort to for the selectmen to consider going with the full assessing program. If that occurs, it would duplicate, my understanding from what the town administrator told me, all of the information that we have on Map Geo plus more would be covered under a contract with Cartographics, if we go with them, for example. They offer that. It's a link to the website, and if that were to occur, then it would not, there would not need to be a duplication of the same information through Map
So we
Geo.
wouldn't need Map Geo.
However, one thing I do want to say is I would suggest that you leave the funding for Map Geo in your budget should the selectmen vote not to go with that.
Exactly.
And if they do vote to go with that, they could also still leave that in your budget and then not, when the budget's approved, not add that funding into planning board. They would have that ability to control that funding.
So where would the other version go? Under the assessing department? Or would we be on the hook for that too?
That's something the Board of Selectmen would determine. They may say, that's what I'm saying, I think it's good to leave the 1,000 in there for Map Geo. They may say, well, they already have 1,000 in there for Map Geo, and if we go with this other program, they can pay 1,000 of the yearly fee.
How much was it, do you know?
I think there is an initial cost.
45,
I think it was
No, it was
2,400 a year.
but 40.
No.
No, they were going to reduce
Oh,
that.
okay, all right.
Are we talking Cartographics now or back to Map Geo?
Yeah,
cartograph.
but that would be something that the selectmen would approve. I've also suggested to them that if it is something, or suggested to Kate, not to them, she's going to present it to them, the possibility of if there's enough funding between now and December in the budget to put that initial upfront work
Startup
completed in 2018, and then we just have the monthly fee, if there's funds available to do it.
What was the name of the company again?
Cartographic.
Cartographic?
CAR.
They're the folks that do our tax maps,
What's the ongoing fee again?
$1,000.
No, that's for Map Geo. What's for the?
2,400 is what I believe I was
Are
told.
they, and that's covering more
That has
information? more-
all of our
All
assessing,
part, yeah.
everything that we have on our, well, not everything,
If you go
but,
to Deerfield's website.
right, Deerfield,
you get
check
a really good
Deerfield.
idea of what
What?
it does.
Deerfield uses this, if you look on
Oh,
their
If you-
website.
Yeah, and you,
What we've been looking at when you've been projecting on the screen here, is that's Map
Map
Geo
Geo.
source?
It's
Can-
it's a subset of our assessing data.
Okay. Can Cartographics, this, perhaps, apparently it's not being used now, or might be, or we're proposing to use it, or the select board is considering. Does it cover that same, could we present that here? Could we see a?
oh, sure, it'd be just the same, Susan will be
Well, I mean,
able to.
I'm saying, would it be the same?
Deerfield's website and show it to you.
Can you turn it back on? or
Turn it back on.
Turn it back on.
So it would be a satellite view presentation, much as we
Okay.
had with the Geo,
Oh, I didn't realize.
Plus all the,
plus other stuff.
plus all the, and so instead of just showing, map owner, address, lot, stuff effect, it would also show, the type of house, any improvements, building permits. I don't know what all.
Oh, but but
It
that
has
wouldn't,
everything, I mean, it has
that wouldn't be of
the
use to us immediately, but I'm just saying
Right.
from a.
valuations, it has the
exactly.
sketches, it has
That's
everything.
fine, but my purpose of the question was simply, would we get the same kind of view as we had tonight, just
Yes.
looking at a lot?
Yes.
We could, so if they go that way, the geo mapping would be
Duplicate.
superfluous.
Exactly.
But if you don't go that way, then we're gonna need that money. So,
A bit of my concern is that we are already spent 60% of our budget, but we're not 60% of the way through the year. you know, looking at the rightmost column,
That includes some encumbrances though, Bob, so,
okay, yep.
so
And
like,
we are,
so I got,
if you're looking at individual lines, we're right about, actually a little less than where we should be, but except for the planning board equipment.
yeah, isn't that the computers, so
That's
we
the
have a
computer. Yeah, we're-
ongoing
Yeah.
cycle of paying
And
for
that's
computers?
also not that much of a line, given the, in terms of the whole budget.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with the adopted budget. I mean, maybe we can put some pressure on the selectmen and round it up to 40,000 and see what they say.
That's what I was thinking.
I think you should-
2%.
Possibly consider increasing supplies. Because, I mean, we've got 33%. I mean, we've been using office supplies that have been here for 2 or 3 years. The other thing is, you know, they got kind of built up and
You don't rotate them through?
back to like from, yeah, there was a lot of
When the
stuff.
master plan is done, are you gonna be like printing that, or like how do you,
I'm sorry, I didn't
the
hear.
master plan, when that's done, will it be printed? Or,
You mean the CIP?
This is the digital age, Theater.
It'll be
Yeah,
available
everyone.
electronically.
We'll print some, but we basically put it online.
so do we have to increase the printing at all, if we're gonna print
Well,
them?
that's what I said, the printing and advertising, what makes that difficult is you don't know how many applications you're gonna receive. And
Right, that's the
that
real
is an in
cost.
and out item, it's a revenue, item. We do get the cost of the abutters notices, but if you get, one that has a lot of abutters, I think we're gonna have one in a couple of months, based on what information I've received that's going to conservation first. There were several pages of abutters. I mean, that adds up quickly when you only have a total of 1,500, and that also includes your newspaper advertising. If that goes up or changes, you know, you have to pay it, and there has to be funds to cover it. And if there isn't, even though there could be revenue coming against it, we'd have to go to the selectmen and ask them for money in another part of the budget
Right.
to cover it. So it's always better to, you know, to have enough in there to cover your own expenses. I think we're doing pretty well on that this year, and you can see last year we did a little over 900, but if we get you know, a lot of applications in, that could change very quickly. Supply line is low. That had been, not too many years ago, like $1,000. And that's been cut back a few times based on not needing, but now we've run out of those supplies that were backed up, and we should have some more funds in that supply line.
So I'd propose 2 changes, and Mr. Kreider can smile when he hears these figures. That we bump printing advertising up to 2,000, and supplies up to 1,010. No, that's not right, sorry.
That's a big.
900.
1041?
$910,
Oh,
which brings our total budget up to 40, even. If I do my math correctly.
What are you doing, Bob? You just
Okay.
He added
It's only
500.
$60
adding to the
difference
supply
there.
line?
Pardon me?
What did you get for a total?
I
Did I
think
do
it
not
was
do it
like
right?
810, but that's just me.
If you're,
The adopted budget is $39.40.
correct, and if we bump advertising up, add $500 over the proposed adopted budget to printing advertising, and we add $460 to supplies.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm adding it as if we're adding $2,910. Don't mind me.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, no. But that brings our total budget up to 40, even.
Okay.
it's beautiful.
We like nice even numbers. And
So,
I can confer with James, and if there needs to be a change in that contracted services, or they anticipate, we'll come in the next month with, before we meet with the selectmen, with so much a month and what the total will be, and some additional feedback on that. Now, and just so you know, on that one, there's also, besides the hourly rate, there is some out-of-pocket expenses that are part of that contract. So it isn't just the flat rate times X amount of hours.
Mileage, phone calls.
All right. You want to make that a motion, and I'll input this into the system?
You've rounded out a few of them on the basis that we need
so if you
maybe
look,
some more supplies.
if you look at the second column,
Yep.
the $1,500 is moving to 2,000. The $450 is moving to 910 for proposed 19 or whatever, 1920 budget in total, and that's the only changes I'm making.
So 450, 460 you're adding, and
I'm
then
adding 500, adding 500 and 460.
500 to the $1,500
Yep.
amount,
and
so it's
460
2,000.
Yep, to 2,000, and then the adding 460 to supplies.
It just coincidentally or miraculously rounds out the...
Yes, exactly. So I do the math. I like round numbers.
Okay.
Well, actually, it doesn't, because we're
I
still
mean,
doing
and
the 28,639.
the basis of that is that we are short, you anticipate being a little short, I mean, it's supplies, and the advertising line that gives us a cushion.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't use it, it's there.
And if we have an increase in contracted services and we don't use it, then things can be moved around.
Excuse me.
Cost of living estimates right now are, I think, 2%.
Whatever.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll propose that
Okay.
we change the budget by the suggestions of the chair, and the amounts.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry, what?
He can tell you.
I'm going to have an extra mouth to feed.
Yes.
December.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
We're still going to pay you the same rate.
You want to take that into account now?
This is Northwood. You gotta talk to the executive director.
We'll get you a case of Fort
They don't need a lot.
You can bring him or her to the
Then come
meetings.
back and say the baby's hungry.
I mean, okay, I'll make the motion that we
Yes.
make these changes. It seems for valid reasons, so, and if we don't use it, we don't use it. It'll be carried over.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Mr. Kreider. It's what, like the fourth one tonight that the
We're on a
two
roll.
of you have ganged up?
Yeah, let's jump
Okay,
in
which
ahead.
is fine, doesn't matter.
You have to like alternate.
Yeah.
Okay, discussion on the budget. Again, the bottom line for planning and development would, for 1920 would be 40 grand. Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, those abstaining. Okay. Okay, updates. Master plan?
I wrote down the numbers.
I don't have anything else on master plan or on CIP unless you do, Bob.
I don't, because I'm well behind on
Okay.
schoolwork since it starts when Monday, teachers are back officially. I did bring my laptop if you want to start hashing out the homework that I gave you last time. But
No. I'm ready to go home.
I'm getting a little, I'd be a little fried to get
I'm
into
ready to
that.
go home.
We're giving him the evil eye.
The other things that I would say then,
We'd have all the Oh, I think we distributed all the data that we had. Have we gotten anything more in? Okay.
Really? It's been like
The-
a month. Only, it's been a month, only just those three departments.
That's typical.
The things to consider are what happens to last year's projects that did not get funded. Things like the recreation put in the, what, those splash thing? Splash pool?
Splash pad?
Splash pad, that's the word I was looking for. Yes, the splash pad.
No.
A couple other. Yes, you did. It was proposed.
By rec?
I never
She
heard
never
it
asked us.
referred to as that.
We were on the commission, but we never asked. I didn't know.
Maybe then the select board needs to figure. Well, no, it's actually us. Okay, here's a question. If the planning board is responsible for the CIP, which we are, and we request from the departments information for capital projects, who determines, or I guess who answers that, or who is the one who is responsible for answering that request? Is it coming from is it, I know the first year we did this,
It's
one member
whoever,
of the school board supplied the information and did not tell the rest of the school board.
Well, it's the responsibility of the department head in the case of the town
Okay.
to gather that information from their department. Like the
Okay.
fire chief would do
Sure.
it for the fire department.
Yeah.
I think what he means is
I think
do the commissions have us, like the committees, do they have a say?
Yep. Oh yeah. They have a say. Well, if like highway advisory would be one. You know, we have it's not necessarily included as a capital project, but if they're looking at replacing equipment, new town truck or a grader or whatever, they would have things in that. Just
I would say it probably doesn't have to be one way or the other. The most guidance we have is that the planning board is responsible for updating the document and designing the process.
okay.
Theoretically, it would be nice if departments had boards that they were responsible to, that they were all on the same page about what was being submitted. If that turns out to not be the case, then the board should think about whether there's a better way to set up the process next time around to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
And that's why I'm looking toward the select person to see if there is.
Well, could you not just submit
Well,
letters
this
to
is
the
a-
commissions and the committees and get their input as well? Maybe you'd receive more than just the 3 responses.
I'm sorry, I
This
couldn't
is
hear
a,
it. I heard part of it.
Deja
but
vu
not
all over again.
You only got 3 responses, right?
Yes, it was sent to everyone.
Right, but
Everyone being all staff
you're
departments?
saying town staff people. So would you be able to resubmit a letter to people that are on a committee, like the police commission, the recreation commission? I know we didn't receive it. I had no idea that we asked
Then
for
that's
it.
an internal problem, not,
But then maybe you get more than 3 responses. That's why I'm asking.
well, without getting into personnel, I can say, for example, the library director said, well, I'm going to send it to you as soon as the library trustees review it and approve it.
Right.
If one person is not bringing that, as a department head, is not bringing that to their committee, that's an internal issue, not, I mean, I'm not going to get into
No, I'm just asking. You
personalities
only got
or-
3, no, it's 'cause you only got 3 responses. That's why I was asking if we spread it out besides just that, the individual people. I don't, doesn't make any difference to me.
No, you've raised a good point as far as the highway, because highway advisory, it'd be like, I don't know if the road agent, for example,
Right.
sat down at the next highway advisory meeting and brought that piece of paper and said, what are we doing? If you want some type of follow-up, I'd be glad to do it. The other thing is, some of these things are a moving thing at this point, particularly fire department, because, you know, there's discussion that's ongoing and coming up that'll be about a safety complex that,
But that wasn't on theirs at all.
that was not
It
on
wasn't
there.
on theirs. It was, you didn't get anything from the police department either?
The safety complex was already addressed in the last year's CIP, the CIP we adopted.
So it would be new items or,
Train.
like you said,
significant
moving
changes
things
to
off
items.
or,
Maybe
but I'd be glad to do another bulk send out and say, have your committees reviewed this? Maybe do it that way so that there'd be an understanding that the committees need to look at it, or I would think they would know that, but I don't.
I don't know, I just,
well, maybe the CIP chair and town staff can sit down to say, take a couple minutes to say, this has been completed, this has been done. Here's a list of projects that were on the CIP that were not funded for 17, 18. Are they still, what's their status? Do you want to pursue them or not? You know, something to that effect. Just so that we as a board know, you know, in the past, yes, we're going to carry things forward until you tell us no, or however we want to do. I can find some an afternoon or some time to go over that, but not before Wednesday.
Well, Bob, one suggestion I would have is, let me ask, did we put dates when we need them back?
I think
Yes.
so, yes.
Yes.
And what were the dates?
Well, I don't know off the top of my head, it was months ago now.
Yeah.
Okay, but what date did we ask for the information back by?
July 9th.
Okay, so I think for this year, you just put in what you got and you move forward.
They didn't propose it, Todd?
They didn't propose it. And this is what happened in Hudson.
Well, it's still new.
This is what happened in Hudson, and after 2 or 3 years, they learned to get it in.
By the deadline.
Yeah.
Although I agree, I think Beth has raised
I
a
think
good
that's what you
point.
gotta
I
do,
think we
and you
need
just
to
gotta-
know that the department, not only the department head, but that the commissions or committees are actually aware of it.
I think
Well,
It
it's
is a
just,
good point. I wouldn't have thought of it. I just figured that the person that received it would,
to Hal's point, though, I think there needs to be some synergy between the planning board and the select board and the budget committee, because I'll state in advance, this is going to sound critical of some departments. It is not meant as negative criticism, but the CIP was developed, and in the process of writing warrant articles and for funding various spending items for various departments, CIP recommendations were totally ignored in terms of the warrants. That, I think, so essentially it was bypassed, which is fine. You know, I helped Sandy write the warrant articles because we didn't have a town administrator at the time. But I think from the perspective of planning board talking to select board, that is an example of when the town departments come to you for funding and you are writing the warrant articles, or whoever's writing the warrant articles in the budget, to say, hey, it's not on the CIP, why are you requesting this now? And essentially bypassing the CIP project. You know, yes, it is the planning board's responsibility, but it's the town departments are yours collectively.
We're just the organizing element, really.
Exactly.
We're not meant to propose anything or recommend anything. We're just simply, what do you guys want?
Our
Let's put this
recommendation
out
is to
there.
say, you proposed it, our recommendation, this is a one method of funding it that will balance out the tax bill over the period of time of the CIP. You can totally ignore it, you can not from the warrant article.
Well, Bob,
And I'm still working on the legality of whether we can say when we do the town voters guide, whether it's recommended by CIP or, included in CIP or not included in CIP.
Well, my suggestion on that would be in addition, when we have the public hearings, that you ask that question on each one of them.
Exactly.
And you also, I'll try to remember to do that on the budget committee.
Okay. Yep.
That just takes a while.
Exactly.
People, yeah.
Exactly. We did get, I don't know if I told you this, whenever we adopted our CIP, I got kudos from about 17 different towns saying, congratulations, you finally did it.
Yeah.
Okay. Chair's report. The chair is tired and the chair is hungry.
Okay, let's go.
Yes, I do. That's fine. No correspondence?
Staff would say two things.
Sure.
One, you got a chance to take a nice fun look at some items in the zoning code that may or may not be the clearest. And that time is rapidly approaching when we would need to consider any zoning amendments for town meeting. So I would say our September workshop is on the 13th. If you all have ideas for zoning amendments that you'd like to address this year, if you could try and send those to me by, say, Friday, September 7th, I will try to have those compiled for us to take a quick look through and say what gets done this year, what gets referred to a committee, etc.
Did we have a discussion about this earlier in the year?
I feel like we mentioned it vaguely, and that may or may not be the time frame that we set, but that's the time frame that I think makes sense to me right now.
I agree.
we heard tonight, a suggestion by Hal, just in clarifying, we were talking about structures earlier, and just a simple little language change, and what the reasons were that people voted against it, as it
People
turned
voted
out.
against it, they didn't know what it meant.
That's just
I mean,
it.
I heard that over and over, there's a whole page of, I had no idea what it was.
Yeah. So there's just a little element of clarification, just reiterating in this case, structures, paved surfaces, structures. And okay. Instead, I think a lot of people interpreted it to mean all kinds of driveways that maybe they envisioned as they didn't want messed with.
Taxed on this driveway.
Right. What they're gonna do to me.
Right. My least favorite comment from a member of the public who spoke at
That would be a good
one of the meetings was, if I don't understand what the planning board's proposing, I vote no.
Yeah.
Well, that would be true of a lot of things.
Right.
And I'm like, yep, that's the case.
Well, at least
And
in
that's the
this,
problem that comes along with SB2 is we don't have a chance to explain to absolutely everybody who reads it on the ballot. But
Right.
that's okay.
But this is an opportunity. As James said, we got a deadline coming up for that, so if we're going to...
Driveways would be one. I'll think of a couple others.
okay.
I'll look back through my
Maybe
notes.
put it in the paper so people can read it prior to, not
Well,
just, it needs to have something.
Right, exactly. We're limited what we could say because we can't
Yes.
advocate for passage of it. We can just take,
We
we can
just-
only
we
explain
explain
it.
it, yeah.
Explain it in neutral language.
Yeah,
I think we need to upgrade Kennel too.
We can explain it, but we can't understand it for them.
well, yeah. But if
Driveway,
I don't
so
understand, I'm
kennels.
gonna vote no, I don't want.
I would love it if these would either be written
Email?
things given to Linda that she can share with me, or an email to me,
I'd have to go look at it.
so that I don't have to try and remember things from 9:35 at night until when I get to the office tomorrow.
Okay.
The other thing,
I think our definition is different than the state definition.
It is too.
Kennels.
More restrictive or less?
That sounds
But
like
just
a lot
submit,
kennels.
submit your
Is
ideas.
there a state
Yeah, I
definition
have
of
to
kennel?
check it against it. I know that I used to
Melvin's
go
too.
through this with Judy
Yeah.
every
Well-
year. so-
There could be some fun stuff involving agriculture too,
Yes,
based on things
agritourism.
that have been passed
Let's
this
talk about
year.
It was agritourism, we decided to exclude because it's.
We get the gist
We
of it.
decided not to change it because of that
Yes.
last year,
Yeah.
but the state has made some changes of their own.
Yes.
So we'll see if and how we need to accommodate that. The other thing that I wanted to mention really quickly, again, we have a new executive director, Jen Ziz. She came from Nashville Regional Planning Commission, and we're super excited to have her. She now wants to start setting up meetings with her communities to get to know people, and I think we got confirmation today that she's going to be on the agenda for the October 9th Select Board meeting. So if you want to attend that night, meet Jen, hear a little bit about other initiatives SRPC has, other services that we offer, her vision, etc. I think Kate has officially confirmed that. So you're welcome to come. And that's all I've got.
Okay.
Motion,
October 9th?
October 9th.
motion to adjourn,
Second,
if you're finished with your,
Yep.
Any discussion?
no? Aye.
Those in favor say aye.
no.
Thank you.